Good day, humans, or night, whenever and wherever my voice is finding your sweet, beautiful ears. I hope things are going well for you. Today, you guys are in for a badass hour-and-a-half convo with my man Bob Meyer from the one and only International Rattlesnake Museum, which is located in the historic Old Town district of Albuquerque. Let me set you up for this one. It's after hours. Bob sees his last patron out, locks the door, and leads myself and my guest host, Jared Cash, into the heart of this beautifully designed and cared for live rattlesnake den, featuring 30 different types of rattlers. It's dark now, and we set up in front of these steely-eyed creatures and hit record, and as soon as we do, it starts to rain. I could not have asked for a cooler setup for a podcast. Bob has been caring for, rescuing, teaching about, and an advocate for these venomous creatures, as well as many others, for over 30 years, and is literally the go-to guy for the state of New Mexico, if not most of the Southwest. We dish on his beginnings, the ins and outs of rattlesnakes, and their mythos, as well as debunking many perceptions a layman like myself and others have about these beautiful creatures. Bob's museum is best experienced in person. He's located at 202 San Felipe Street, Old Town, Albuquerque, and on his site at rattlesnakes.com. I want to give a shout out to my man, Ian Oliver, our latest sponsor on Patreon. Thank you for helping us out on the Perch, man. It's greatly appreciated. And if you guys want to help us grow the flock, we're at patreon.com/APOB media, as well as aperchabirds.com. Guys, I don't know what the H happened, but I seem to have eaten the microphone in certain places at the beginning, so I apologize ahead of time for the ugliness that is my voice at the beginning of the cast. Once you record it, you can't really go back, especially the way that I do these on location, so I will try very hard not to have this happen again in the future. I also want to give a quick shout out to a really cool podcast that is doing great things out there, the Mysterious Circumstances podcast. The host and I recently started talking, really great guy, got some really cool stuff. There's almost nothing that you are interested in that he hasn't covered, at least some sort of historical figure that I'm sure piques somebody's interest. He covers things like the life and death of famous people like Jesse James, Marilyn Monroe, Wyatt Earp, and many more. Cheers to your future, brother. And again, that's a Mysterious Circumstances podcast. Make sure you guys check that out. You can check out that podcast as well as A Perch of Birds anywhere you guys get podcasts, and of course, aperchabirds.com. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we really appreciate you. Enjoy. Hey, welcome to A Perch of Birds podcast. I have a very special guest, Mr. Bob Myers from the Rattlesnake Museum off of San Felipe in Albuquerque in Old Town. If you guys know anything about Albuquerque, I would hope that you had visited, or in the future, if you ever do visit Albuquerque and or New Mexico, you're going to check out Old Town. And Bob's real easy to find and basically world renowned. I don't know if we did hear that there is a competitor, but that competitor is nothing compared to this Rattlesnake Museum. Bob, say hello to everybody out there.
Hello to everybody.
And then we've got Mr. Jared Cash joining us. He's a APOB alumni from Live, New Mexico. How you doing, buddy?
How's it going?
So we got everybody on the microphone here today. So Bob, tell me, first thing I'd like to ask you, man, is what got you involved with rattlesnakes, and we'll of course evolve that into what got you involved to the point where you're opening a museum with these guys. But yeah, so talk to me. Where did rattlesnakes come from as a passion for you?
Well, I've been into reptiles since I was a little kid. 3 or 4 years old was my starting point, and just came by it naturally. My dad always said I had the reptile gene, and got involved with rattlesnakes in college down in Las Cruces, and really got into the rattlesnake thing. But after graduating, I went to Florida to teach. I taught high school biology for a while, 6 years, couldn't stand the humidity. So came back to Albuquerque, good old Albuquerque. And took a little time off and thought about working in a museum, but then that evolved into maybe I'll start my own thing.
Right.
And so I got back into the rattlesnake thing. I tell everybody it's a lot safer than teaching high school biology. You know what to expect from rattlesnakes.
Right.
And so here I am 28 years later, at the Rattlesnake Museum in Albuquerque.
Right. So when you started this, you had a you did have some sort of a background in herpetology, right? Like you had done this with a class. I did peruse your site ever so slightly, but you had done something with like Las Cruces. Where was the college that you had gone to where you'd kind of gotten some face-to-face, some scientific interface?
Well, I was a
with these
biology major down at New Mexico State.
Okay.
And I did take my herp class.
Okay.
Along with everything else that was offered. But I have a passion for the reptiles. I feel like they need a friend, and so I'm going to do that. Like we talked before, they have a lot of enemies. So
sure.
It's a big big role to fill here at the museum.
Sure. And I think that there's, even as a New Mexican, and I think that a lot of New Mexicans that may not even know that this place exists, I think there's a lot of myth, especially if you're a city dweller, I say with air quotes, because I think that when you're in the city, you don't deal with them as much. And of course, I would think that almost everybody as a New Mexican had come across them at one point. But I think that there's a lot of, I hear a lot of people, they say a good snake's a dead snake, and I wanted to dispel that myth. Of course, that's why one of the reasons why I brought Jared on, because I wanted to make sure that people understood that, he goes out and hikes almost every day, at least a day or two every week. And in doing so, he runs across rattlesnakes and many other types. And if you killed them all, then they wouldn't even be around anymore like that. You know what I mean? So I guess my next question would be what was one of the motivations behind you opening the museum besides your passion for herpetology?
Well, one thing we do here is to try to dispel those myths. In fact, we've got a quiz that people can give themselves halfway through the museum that asks questions that revolve around those myths. So things like, you can tell the age of a rattlesnake by counting the segments in its rattle. Well, that's not true, and that is explained. But out of the 24 questions, I'd say the average person gets fewer than half of them right, because they've heard all these myths and legends, old wives' tales, urban myths, all their lives. And so they come in here just assuming they know a lot about rattlesnakes.
Right.
And in some cases, it's hard to talk them out of those things because they are so sure they've seen a 12-foot rattlesnake, and they're sure they can tell the age of the rattlesnake by counting those rattles.
And I'm sure that, things like social media are creating a lot of these mythos that are hard to dispel.
Yeah, they perpetuate it for sure.
Right.
There's so much stuff out there that...
Well, I have people all over the country sending me pictures. Every time a new picture of a so-called giant rattlesnake is sent out on the internet, it comes to me from 100 different directions.
Sure.
And I try to explain to people that these are pictures of a rattlesnake on a hook held out towards the camera.
Sure.
And so the perspective is skewed.
It's an optical illusion.
It is. You're seeing a rattlesnake, a 4-foot rattlesnake, that looks more like it's 8 or 10 feet long because it's so close.
And in the same breath, so tell me, what would be a typical length, and then what would be a maximum length that has been recorded, I guess, scientifically, that you've seen of a rattlesnake, like maximum?
Yeah, well, the maximum recorded length for any rattlesnake was an eastern diamondback. They've got the genetics to be the largest if they're allowed to grow. The record was 8 feet 1 inch.
Oh, man.
And as far as I can tell, that record was set about 100 years ago, and there has not been a rattlesnake seen that big since.
Okay.
Every other one of my customers coming in says they've seen one bigger, but they have not. They're talking to the wrong guy, trying to make me believe it. I'll smile and go, wow, but they may have seen a 4 or 5 foot rattlesnake. In their mind, it was a lot bigger.
Sure. And then Jared, tell me what quickly, let's credit the man. So what is hosted here consistently to where, he would be able to speak to these things scientifically? You're saying that
besides his accreditation, you have the Herpetological Society that meets here all the time?
Yeah.
Right.
The Reptile Society meeting is here once a month, first Wednesday. If anybody wants to attend, they're welcome to. It's not a closed group. And you
can sign up on the internet too on the New Mexico Herpetological Society website.
But in the same breath, I guess what I'm saying is there's these cats are not going to come in here and be like, oh yeah, we've seen those 20-foot rattlers. They're real. They wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? So I mean that totally adds to the credit that just because you run the museum doesn't mean that you're not out there seeing what field work is being done, which is essentially what these Herpetological Society guys would be doing, right? They'd be coming in and saying, hey, like scientifically speaking, there's just not going to be a snake that big. I have a ball python, and I've had this ball python for about 12 years.
About 24 feet long?
Yeah. And I have people that consistently tell me, they're like, isn't that going to get so big that you can't take care of it? I'm like, well, at 12 years, I would think that it's full grown, you know, and it's just, you know, the specific breed. I think the males top out at like 4.5 to maybe 5 feet, you know, and maybe. Yeah. And that's talking about a big one. I think mine, I haven't measured him, but I think he's about 4 foot.
Something like that.
Yeah, you know, and he's a male. You know, I'll say that.
What about on the other end of the spectrum, the pygmy rattlesnake? Is that the smallest species?
There are several pygmy rattlesnakes. In fact, that group that we call pygmy rattlesnakes, there are 6 of them. 3 of them have the word pygmy in their name. And typically those guys are 18 to 24 inches. So they're not big. That's as big as they get.
Sure.
They've got a hot venom, but not much of it. So
right.
Not particularly dangerous. The big guys, like the Western Diamondback, have long fangs, big venom glands, a lot of venom. If their bite is dangerous, it's for those reasons and not the potency of the venom.
It's the amount they can pump in, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sure.
So people die once in a while from a snake bite. Most often in this country, that's a Western Diamondback. Because we come in contact with more of them. Those rattlesnake roundups play with the snakes, and a lot of those guys are bitten. But death rate from rattlesnakes is about 1 in 1,000. So that's another myth. People come in assuming a rattlesnake bite is it.
Sure.
That's the end of your life. And they're shocked to find out, no, you're going to live on. I get the question, how long are you going to live after a rattlesnake bite? I said, well, it probably depends on your general health and how old you are now.
Well, that's where you got to mess with them, you know?
So if you're 20 years old, probably another 60 years or so.
I read 6,000 to 8,000 snake bites a year, something like that. Yeah. And about 5 people die out of all those.
Yeah.
Some of them are from privately kept snakes like cobras and black mambas and stuff like that.
Yeah. And sometimes there are people that don't seek medical attention after a bite. They just assume they're going to do okay, and they probably will be okay, but not always. We've only had 1 death to rattlesnake bite in New Mexico in 30 years.
Wow!
And it was not a New Mexico species of rattlesnake, and he did not go to the hospital.
Sure.
Jeez.
And so he probably would have survived, but. He was a little cocky and thought he was going to get away with it.
So since we're on the subject here, I got to ask, how many, or have you ever been bitten?
Once.
One time?
Yeah. That's
out of all these snakes here. You're telling, because how many do you have here in the museum?
Including those off exhibit, or just what you're seeing?
Let's talk about just in the museum.
Well, we've got 30 different species on exhibit, but we have in the neighborhood of 100, 120 snakes total.
Wow.
We have a lot of snakes off exhibits.
Yeah.
And of course, those have to be fed and maintained. But here at the museum, we don't touch the snakes unless they've got to be medicated. It's hands off. We use tools. We lift the snakes in and out. So it's not dangerous. Just because they're here doesn't mean they're going to be a danger to us. We're not stupid about the situation. Right? We know how to prevent bites. The one and only bite I ever had was over 20 years ago, and I was handling the snake for photographs for National Geographic.
Oh, man.
Not giving the snake my full attention, and he slipped away, and it happens quick.
Sure.
What type of snake was it?
It was a timber rattlesnake.
Timber rattlesnake?
Yeah, not a New Mexico species.
Right.
And the same species that killed that other guy.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I'm the only survivor of a timber rattlesnake bite in New Mexico.
That should warrant like a Guinness, shouldn't it?
I doubt it.
Come on,
it's a record I wouldn't want to have.
Yeah, I didn't die. Get a shirt.
I'll tell you, what wasn't fun. Oh, you missed a big yawn. That snake had its mouth wide open.
Yeah, we're in the midst of a bunch of rattlesnakes right now. They're all around us.
You're getting video of this, right? You got the video. Okay, yeah. So you guys can see a little bit, but yeah, out of shot here, we've got a bunch of rattlers that are. These are very happy rattlers because a good healthy snake is one that's curious and is moving around, good color, good body weight, and I see a lot of these snakes that are all of the above.
Yep.
So I'm sure that, in your passion, how much time do you have to spend daily dealing with these guys, feeding them and husbandry across the board? Do you spend every day? I mean, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Every day, say 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. Wow.
So 6 to 8 hours with the public, the dangerous part.
Yeah.
And then work with the snakes. It's a full schedule. Yeah. This time of day, as you can see, some of the snakes are a little more active.
Sure.
But there are some snakes that are highly active most of the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
That big old Eastern right there in the front, right when you walk in, he's just moving.
He's always
back
busy. Yeah.
That's a beautiful snake.
He's just over 6 feet long, and he's probably generally the most active snake here.
Wow. Yeah, that's a gorgeous snake.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take as much footage of these guys as of course I can, and then I'd like to be able to show off. But I think is he the biggest in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Certainly
Okay.
by weight.
Oh, sure. Okay.
A couple of them are nearly as long, but more slender rattlesnake species.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that depends on the species in order for them to get wider, I guess, thicker.
Yeah. And people don't realize too, genetics among snakes is kind of like genetics among people. There are some of us that only hit 5'2" and other ones that are 7'2".
Sure.
And so some snakes of the species, say Eastern Diamondback, have the genetics to attain a size of 7 feet, but others don't.
Sure.
Same thing with coloration and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah.
You can get many different colors.
All kinds of colors, patterns.
So I guess the real question that a lot of people would want to come across, in my thinking, all of them are venomous, all rattlesnakes as a species. But would any of them be more or less venomous than their cousins?
Yeah. In this country, the two rattlesnakes that are best known for being more potently venomous.
Okay. That's probably the word I should have used.
The tiger rattlesnake and the Mojave rattlesnake.
Okay.
There are several others that do fit into that group closely. The midget faded rattlesnake, the rock rattlesnakes, the timber rattlesnake, the southern Pacific rattlesnake. These are all snakes with a more potent venom. More toxic venom.
and then what is the type? Is it hemotoxic?
Yeah, all rattlesnakes have a hemotoxin.
Okay.
That's the part of the venom that breaks down tissues, causes pain and swelling. But some
and when we're saying
rattlesnakes-
break down tissues, this is permanent damage. Like if you get bit, you could potentially lose parts of a bicep or something like that, right?
You could if you let it go that long.
Okay.
Most people are going to get to the hospital, and I highly suggest that. Antivenin is an amazing drug, and people can easily protect themselves from, loss of fingers by getting those treated.
So no matter what the rattlesnake breed or whatever you assume you're identifying it as, you're going to always want to go to the doctor.
Yes.
Okay.
And all rattlesnakes and all other pit vipers in North America, that includes copperheads and water moccasins, are treated with the same antivenin.
Huh. Okay.
So you don't have to know what snake bit you.
Sure.
A lot of people think they do.
Okay.
You don't have to bring the snake with you to the hospital. I suggest you don't. They won't let you in.
Hey, this was the one. No, I don't want to kill him. Come on, man. He's doing his job.
I've heard of people getting bitten twice because they're trying to catch the snake.
Oh, man.
Or their buddy getting bitten trying to catch a snake
Sure.
for him.
Sure.
So they go to the hospital together. But the doctor can determine how severe the bite was and how much antivenin needs to be used. And
You're saying venin. I noticed that you had like a difference on the word, and I saw that on your website. So why do they call it venin? Is this just a technical term for it, or is this?
Oh, I don't know where that started. But more often among snake people, you'll hear antivenin rather than antivenom.
Venom. Sure. Okay. Okay.
So, and there are some other words you use that are not so appropriate.
But okay, so then hospitals across the board carry these things, or is there specific ones? Or I mean,
Most large hospitals do.
Okay.
Particularly those in areas where rattlesnakes might be found.
like probably New Mexico hospitals would be
Yeah.
carrying these things. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't say that everyone does in New Mexico, but there's a good chance they do. It's an expensive drug. It's expensive for the hospital to keep them. It's expensive for you or your insurance company
Sure.
if you have to use them.
Because I'm sure there's only so many on hand.
Yeah. and a severe bite might require 10 or more vials.
Holy shit!
And
So how do they make this stuff? What's the story on how it's created?
okay,
Use a horse.
got another hour or two here.
the shortened
The short version.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there are people around this country crazier than you and me.
Okay.
They are the ones that extract venom from the snakes. They're hands-on.
Sure. Okay.
And they take that venom and send it to pharmaceutical companies. They, in a lot of cases, if not most cases, that venom is sent to New Zealand, where the venom is injected into sheep in small amounts.
Those poor sheep.
Got a lot of sheep. They don't even know. It's small amounts. But the sheep develop a resistance to our rattlesnake, our pit vipers.
Okay.
4 different venoms are used. And they develop the resistance to the antibodies to the venom. And blood is taken from the sheep. The serum is separated out. It's freeze-dried and sent back to the United States. And it sits on the shelf at the hospital until someone needs it. They put that back into solution, inject it into you after a snake bite. And now you have the resistance to that bite that the sheep prepared you for.
Wow. And is this something that, and I've kind of seen this. I can't remember the name of the guy that would consistently inject himself with the venom. Have you seen this guy on TV?
That guy on YouTube?
He's been around for a long time, but he would consistently do it under the guise that he was creating more of a resistance,
Inoculating
himself. Do you think that's something that can be done? Or
The guy that's best known for that was a guy named Bill Haast.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
He's
Sure.
no longer alive, but
He was an old cat.
100
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
Really?
100 years old. He had 183 serious snake bites. He never counted snake bites from baby snakes. He says, that doesn't count. So he survived mamba bites, king cobra bites.
Wow.
Things that are more often fatal than not.
So you could almost build a resistance to it.
He felt he did. He also felt, as he got older and older, that it was helping him stay healthy in his older
It
years.
sounds like it. 100 years.
Don't recommend it, though.
That-
I wouldn't recommend that.
Well,
The way this conversation's gone, too, it seems like it's another one of those myths that anytime you're going to be around a rattlesnake, you're going to get bitten. It's a very rare thing to get bit by a rattlesnake. I find them all the time. I go hiking. I'm always out taking pictures of them, finding them. I rarely even have them strike at me because you just give them distance and respect and you don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
It's people who put their hands under pieces of wood or don't expect it that really you find getting bit more than somebody who's out there actually around rattlesnakes a lot,
Yeah. I guess the best thing, the best words I can send out are that rattlesnakes are not aggressive animals. They do not attack people. They are defensive. They'll try to protect themselves if we harm them, if we get too close and they feel threatened. People that are bitten accidentally step on them or sit on them.
Sure.
Or they're poking at them, prodding, trying to kill them with a stick or something, and they get too close, and the snake's trying to defend itself. Good old Steve Irwin, I love that guy, but when he'd say, "This is the most aggressive snake I've ever run into," after chasing it around for the last half hour, I'd say to Steve through the television screen, "Buddy, you're the aggressive one.
Right.
That snake's trying to defend himself."
Sure, absolutely.
And they're considered a non-aggressive snake. Rattlesnakes are non-aggressive, right?
They'll try their best to keep to themselves. Their first line of defense is to sit still and quiet and hope you pass on by.
Yeah. Sure.
And I bet that happens a lot.
What was the terminology for what they use? It's crypto for they use their natural ability to hide, right?
Yeah.
Which is
they're cryptic.
There you go. Okay.
Their patterns and colors blend in very well with the surroundings. And I've taken people on hikes, and I take them through seriously snake-infested areas.
Never seen
And I stop people after they passed by them, and I bring them back, and I say, "Take a look at this. This snake was 4 feet off the path, and you didn't see him, and he was sure happy. He didn't make a sound.
Yep.
And you would have gone on about your business, and he would have
Never
gone
known.
back to his family." And once you see a few, you're sort of tuned into them. Your mind's eye takes over, and you start to see them a little bit better. But they do hide. And I would imagine I get a lot of hikers and campers in here, and they claim to hike and camp all the time, and they never see rattlesnakes. And I say, I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but they probably saw you.
And they just didn't do anything about it.
They sat still and let you pass on by.
So Jared takes me hiking quite a bit. This guy got me into hiking really when we started hanging out years ago. And and in doing so, I remember and I still do it. I like to hike in these Vibram toe shoes, and essentially it's just like a moccasin almost that just goes over your toes. But he would hike in the actual snake-proof boots, and I was always like, that's too much.
He's the smarter one. But I dress more like you do.
Yeah.
I used to
be
do
comfortable.
that. I don't do it anymore.
And even then, he's actually, I have been on him. You're hiking, and sometimes you're hot, you're sweaty, and you're trying to get from A to B, and your goal's up there, and it's like, man, I just want to get to the top of this trail, And I have marched right by a snake, and he'll stop me, and he'll tell me, "Look what you did," and we'll go back, and we'll see a little beauty hiding in the bush, and they're not rattling at you, they're not warning you, because you're not, we wouldn't encroach upon, but we would just, from afar, because we do the cameras, and we would just try to take as many pictures as possible without getting in on top of and pissing it off, essentially. Yeah. But I can't tell you how many times, because I would have never thought about it. Same kind of thing, like I've hiked, and I would have never thought, unless he had spotted it, and this guy goes out of his way to look for them, and I think that goes along with being interested in it for one. But my grandfather would do the snake hunts in Oklahoma, where they would do these contests where they would try to see. Yeah, and they would try to put them in these burlap bags, and he would bring them home when he would be able to, however much he was allowed to capture. And, they'd get turned into headbands in some cases. In other cases, he would just keep them as long as he felt like. And we had boas and stuff like that. So that always had an interest to me, but never to the point where I was going to keep a damn venomous snake in my house. It's not going to happen. But, and in terms of having to get one to even rattle when you'd taken it from the wild and brought it in domestically, you would have to piss it off. You'd have to force it to do that, like defend itself. There's most rattlesnakes. I mean, even here, we walked around this museum a couple times, and I've gotten close. I haven't seen one of them even start to rattle. They're just interested in, hey, what am I looking at? So your best advice, a hiker comes upon a snake, would be purely to take your pictures and keep your distance, right?
Yeah. Give it a respectful distance, and do take a lot of pictures. You don't need to run away. It's not going to chase you.
Sure, it's not a black mamba, right?
I guarantee you it will not chase you. And I describe it like any other sighting of wildlife. It's a fun, enjoyable experience. You wouldn't run away from a rabbit. You'd stand there and watch him.
Right.
You don't need to run away from a snake. I had a guy in the other day that told me about a snake he saw while he was out hiking. Wanted to show me a picture. He actually had video on his phone, and he starts showing me, and I'm looking at this video, and all of a sudden I hear bang, 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 and dirt flying. I said, "Are you shooting at that snake?" He says, "Well, yeah, we're in danger."
Oh, no.
It's like, come on now. He was crossing the road 30 feet ahead of you. He was moving the other way, and you felt endangered by that snake. I don't think so. People might be able to convince themselves, maybe. I can't imagine in his mind he really believed that. Yeah. But he was trying to convince me that he was in danger.
Yeah, you're the wrong guy to bring that to, for sure.
Yeah. New a sign up front is be aware you're about to tell your story to somebody that knows better. Yeah. So be careful what you say.
I might be tangenting a bit, but I didn't cover this, and I just wanted to ask it.
Yeah.
Is there ever a point when somebody does get bit, whether or not they're playing with the snake or they're accidentally walking by it, to where they get a dry bite, where they do not get venom? I mean, is that more often than not? Would there be an evolutionary reason for them to not inject you with venom, or is it just luck that they didn't get you with the venom?
Well, it is luck if you have not been envenomated. Depending on what study you read, a dry bite, a bite with no venom injected, can be every 1 out of 5 bites or 1 out of 3 bites. And you are fortunate if you receive that bite with no venom. But that happens.
Yeah.
People that are bitten probably panic. Like I said before, a lot of people think you're going to die. You're just going to die if you've been bitten.
Sure.
Well, not only you're not going to die, you might not even need treatment. You may not have
gotten envenomated. Yeah.
I think in so many cases, you're better off, having a dry bite from a rattlesnake than a bite from a rat. Who knows what that rat's carrying?
Sure.
But
could they carry rabies?
Snakes, no.
No, okay, because that's
In fact,
mammals.
Rattlesnakes.
That's usually carnivorous mammals.
One of the reasons rattlesnakes are so important, and people seem to overlook this, is that they kill the animals that carry diseases. They kill the rats and mice and other animals that carry plague and hantavirus and all this other stuff.
Sure.
So when you see a rattlesnake and you go to kill it, you should be thinking that you don't have plague right now. Because if it wasn't for them and all the animals they kill, it would be a lot more prevalent.
Right. New Mexico is where the hantavirus had its start from, right? And the plague. Sure. Yeah. We've had cases of, and those snakes would be helping with that.
I guess one more myth we could maybe debunk here is the sucking the blood or sucking the venom out from when you get bitten.
That's first aid of the past.
Yeah.
Nowadays they say forget the first aid kits. Get somebody else to drive you to the hospital, have it taken care of there.
So let's cover that just slightly in detail. The short and sweet. If I get bit by a rattlesnake right now, I got nailed in the foot. Oh God, one of these guys get out. What would I want to do? And what's my go-to in the next 30 minutes? What am I doing?
Well, hopefully you're hiking with a partner.
Okay.
I always tell people, don't hike alone. Don't camp alone. What are you going to do if you break your leg? You can't walk. What are you going to do?
Right. Or La Llorona gets you.
Or what?
the Llorona, right? It's not the Sasquatch, whatever. Any of the above. I don't know.
Right. But with phones nowadays, sometimes if you've got phone service, you can get hold of somebody. But at the very least, if you can't hike out, and sometimes you can't, it's just too painful, your hiking partner can do that. They can airlift you out of anywhere now.
Sure.
And once in a while, that's necessary. But get to the hospital. Someone else should drive. People have been known to pass out after a rattlesnake bite. And have someone else drive you, get you there safely. Don't think you need to be there in 10 minutes. Get there as soon as you can safely.
Yeah.
Not 140 miles an hour down the freeway.
No, officer, I got bit.
Yeah. Right. So get there. They'll take a look at it. They may have you for a while observing the bite, trying to determine how severe it is, or that you might have had a dry bite, and the doctor can determine that.
So, because my mother-in-law, just one of the few people I know of that's gotten bit recently, about a year ago, she was reaching down to where she lives south of Berlin, down there, way in the in the wilderness. I call it the wilderness, but there's we've seen a few rattlesnakes. A couple of her dogs have gotten hit before. And, they bloated watermelons on their snout and the whole bit. A couple of them died because it was a pack of like 3 or 4 little dogs, and they tried to attack the rattlesnake, and the rattlesnake kept nailing them. Unfortunately, she just decided to take care of it because it was just being aggressive to her dogs. And she'd killed that one.
Defensive.
Yeah, whatever. So like 4 months later, in the same breath, she had basically gone down there to turn off water, just something simple, and didn't realize that where that water spout was at, out near her horses, there was a rattler there, and it had nailed her right in the end of her finger. Oh. And she decided to put away the rest of her groceries and feed her horses, water her horses. About an hour later, she said, well, I'm not feeling so good. So she decides to cruise down to the hospital. And of course, when she had gotten to the hospital, they were freaking out on her purely in the sense of like, how long has this been? What? Let's get on top of this, and they thought it had progressed, but her hand had swelled up really bad. She said it felt like it was going to pop, and she said that it was really big, but she was able to, they had given her antivenom, and they just kind of watched her overnight. They made her just lay in the bed, but it was nothing in terms of what I've been told, and kind of even just what I've gleaned from our conversation, it was nothing that was considered to be like a big medical emergency. Right. But she said she was feeling dizzy. She drove herself to the hospital, so I think that she had gotten tagged.
Driving, not a good idea.
Yeah. So, for one, I told her all of the above. No, I told her, Mary, hey, in the future, but she's a tough lady, so I give her credit there. But what you're saying is essentially, as soon as you get tagged, time is of the essence. Try to get back to the doctor, at least get checked out, right?
Yeah. Get it checked out.
Okay.
And we're talking about rattlesnakes, but a lot of people don't know their snakes very well.
Sure.
They may have been bitten by a bull snake.
Okay.
And if they don't know, if they think it could be a rattlesnake, but they're not sure, still get it checked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, rattlesnakes do have rattles, everybody, but not everybody looks to see.
Right.
And we do a lot of rescues. We get called to people's yards to pick up snakes. And almost always they say it's a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
And half the time it is. half the time it's a bull snake or another non-venomous snake.
I'm sure that's a letdown for you. You're like, damn it.
No, it's not. But if it is a non-venomous snake, then I go into my spiel about, well, he's an important predator. He's not going to hurt you. He's not going to hurt your pets. You might want to think about leaving him in your yard.
Sure.
He's there because there are rodents around.
Sure.
And if they're there are rodents. That's why they go where they go. And a lot of people say, yeah, we do have rodents. And some people can stomach the idea of letting that snake prowl their property, and others cannot.
Yeah.
Even if they get rid of it, they're going to come back. We live in their wilderness. We've built houses where they've lived for thousands of years. So you can relocate it, but eventually it's going to come back, or something else will take its place.
Right. Most of the people in this town, in Albuquerque, that have snakes in their yard are living in a house within 3 or 4 houses of the very perimeter of the city. We get a lot of phone calls to Placitas and Edgewood and Berlin.
Sure. And for you guys listening, these are more at the edge or outside of what would be
area.
Metro Albuquerque, more or less.
Almost suburbs.
Sure.
Yeah, they're out. The houses are further between, and snakes can move more freely between the houses. And we get called to a lot of those. Now, a lot of those people that live in the country do understand that snakes are predators and are doing them a favor, and they'll leave them if they're not rattlesnakes.
Sure. In the same breath, they're not territorial though. They're not holding down your house as their home, right? Like they're
there long enough to find that food, and then they'll move on
and they'll cruise. Yeah. So what about when they are mating or they have a clutch of eggs? What's the story behind that? Do they find the most peaceful spot in order to lay their clutch, or do they just do it at whim when they get pregnant? They don't pop those suckers out.
I got to start with one thing.
Okay. They don't lay eggs. Okay.
Rattlesnakes don't lay eggs. They're live-bearing snakes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
This is why I want you to know, Bob. This is why I do a podcast, because I learned things. I didn't know that they didn't put out eggs. Okay, so that doesn't make them. Why doesn't that make them mammals? Speak to me, guys.
They have a membrane around the snake inside them.
Okay.
Which evolved the egg,
right?
Kind of evolved.
Your
stuff. The membrane, yeah. Well,
hence why I brought them on.
I love rattlesnakes. It's kind of like an egg, but they don't lay eggs. They just give live birth.
Sure. So in the same breath, when they're doing this, there's no milking of these snakes. Like they don't have to feed them anything like that.
They're not mammals.
I know. Hey, come on! I didn't know that they didn't come out of eggs. So let's just go the full Monty here. Let's get it all out.
Yeah, there are other snakes that give live birth. Garter snakes, the boa family, including anacondas.
And are these guys ready to go when they come out? They're ready to eat.
They're ready to head off on their own. Mom does not take care of them.
Wow. Okay.
They are on their own. They've got to find their first meal, and so
or become one,
and most of them do.
Yep. The neonates are the most.
Most of those baby snakes are food for something else.
Yes.
It's not easy to be a baby snake. It's an easy meal for a lot of.
It's hot out here for a snake.
So, what is your favorite rattlesnake or snake? I guess. I guess it doesn't even have to be a snake. Your favorite animal. You own a rattlesnake museum, but
yeah. Oh, I don't know. If I said anything other than I love all animals, my wife would wonder what's wrong with me. I do like all animals. Snakes have a special spot in my heart, and rattlesnakes in particular. For a lot of reptile people, rattlesnakes are special. That rattle makes all the difference in the world. I remember Steve Irwin saying rattlesnakes are my favorite snakes. And he didn't have any rattlesnakes in Australia, but
I was going to ask that. Okay. So they don't have any there?
No, they're all in the Americas.
Okay.
North, Central, and South America.
Okay.
They are an all-American snake.
Ooh.
And so they almost became our national symbol over the bald eagle.
Okay. Timber rattlesnake, right?
Timber rattlesnake, yeah. That appeared on a lot of those early American
I'll have you guys
flags.
know that we have the only survivor of a timber rattlesnake on our podcast right now.
In this state.
Of a bite from a timber.
In the states where those snakes occur,
okay,
I'm sure there are quite a few more. Yeah. But
what about the most unique rattlesnake you've ever seen?
Most unique rattlesnake.
Right. I mean, it could be a melanistic or two-headed, maybe.
Gosh, I have seen two-headed rattlesnakes, but I was most awed by an eastern diamondback that someone had raised up in captivity to about 7.5 feet. And it's easy to say that, but when you see something like that, for somebody like me, that's an awesome moment.
Sure.
That snake was so big that even my jaw dropped.
Do they get more aggressive as they get bigger?
No, if anything, less.
You keep saying that word, aggressive.
Yeah, we'll teach.
Well, all right. All right, look here, guys.
Okay.
But at that size, they're able to eat rabbits, like baby rabbits and stuff like that, right? Because we used to have boas, and at 8 feet, 7 feet, they're able to eat, like, you're feeding them chicks and you're feeding them rat, because you feed most of these guys mice, rats, things of that nature. Yeah. But at that size, are you feeding them bigger game?
Well, you could.
You could. Okay. Or like 5 little mice. Okay.
Rattlesnakes. We're talking western and eastern diamondbacks will get going on rabbits.
Okay.
I've seen them eat some pretty big pack rats that you wouldn't imagine they could get down. Prairie dogs, jackrabbits, not necessarily full grown.
Sure.
Young ones. A lot of people say, "Oh, how can a snake eat a prairie dog?" Well, they'll go down underground and eat them before they turn 3 days old.
Wow.
They're little tiny guys, and they'll gobble down a bunch.
Do they have to, when they hunt and when they eat, do they have to envenomate first? Is that like do they like bite and then wait for it to crawl off and die? Or, I mean, are they, because like my ball python will grab an animal and wrap it up and choke it.
Yeah. And
then once it's dead, eat it. But that's not what a rattlesnake's game is. It's just going to inject and wait for it to die, right?
Yeah. Typically, venomous snakes envenomate and sit back and wait for them to die before they eat them.
Sure.
Constrictors like you're describing will wrap around them until the heart stops beating, and then they'll eat them.
Sure.
There are a handful of snakes that do eat live prey. More often, the live prey is going to be a frog or a toad.
Okay.
That kind of thing. But yeah, I have to say that I've seen captive rattlesnakes, venomous snakes, start gobbling something down while it's still kicking.
Wow. Okay. See, and I've only seen, I've had my ball python for, like I said, like I think 12 years, and almost every time it's gotta make sure that heartbeat's gone, because it's afraid to get hurt. You know what I mean?
That's it. The snakes are afraid of their prey. That's why, rattlesnakes will strike and release and hold back and wait. In the wild, that rodent will run off maybe 30 feet away, and the snake will find it by following its scent trail and eat it after it's dead. I always tell people, if you've got a pet snake, you don't want to be feeding it live food, because in a cage, the rules change. The prey can't get away, so they'll turn and fight. And snakes have been killed by rodents in a cage.
They talk about that with ball pythons because that's their claim to fame, is the balling, where they put their head inside of their body when they ball up around their head to protect themselves. And I've seen where people will leave the rat or snake, or the rat or the mouse inside of the cage, and they'll actually start to eat the damn snake, like eat the scales off or the tail or something like that. I've never had that issue, because after, a couple hours at max, if he's not interested, then I'll pull the guy out, load the feeder and just give him more time or whatever.
Yeah. Try to get him on pre-killed. We get frozen rodents.
Okay. And then you heat them up, and then
we'll put them in a bucket of warm water, thaw them out.
Okay.
Dry them off, set them in, and
so that's not a PETA thing. That's coming from Bob at the Rattlesnake Museum, that's legitimately feed them that way.
Taking good care of your snake, protecting your snake from its food.
Wow. Okay.
You definitely want to feed it that way.
I will heed your advice, sir. Okay. Very cool.
Have you seen this video of the snake in the tree that the hunter found here in New Mexico? The rattlesnake at the top of the tree?
Oh, yes. I haven't heard it was in New Mexico. I got the same video, but my source said it was New Jersey or somewhere else.
Sure.
I can't remember. But, these pictures do.
The internet
around.
said.
Yeah, the internet.
I believe it was a hunter in New Mexico. And
well,
I was talking to somebody about it, and they said that they think the rattlesnake might have been following the smell of a bird.
I doubt whether that was the situation. They've got better things to do than stick their head up in the air sniffing for food. But yet again, I can't tell you what exactly was going on there.
So have you heard of rattlesnakes being in trees and some snakes climbing up in the, like rattlesnakes specifically?
Snakes. rattlesnakes aren't the best climbers, but they can climb. More often, if you see a snake in a tree here, it's going to be a bull snake or a coach whip snake.
Because the term for a tree snake would be arboreal.
That's if it lives its life in the tree.
In a tree, sure. So okay. So then, what's a rattler? What are they typically doing? Terrestrial. Okay, so they're on the ground.
Or fossorial, live underground.
Okay.
Yeah. All these fun words, but that snake up in the tree could have been sick. Yeah, it could have been. There are diseases that snakes get. One in particular, commonly called stargazing. Sick snake will put its head up in the air and it'll kind of twist around and
they'll do
look
that
a little aimless.
Arc.
Definitely, whatever reason, it was probably an anomaly for that snake was up in that tree.
Yeah,
it's not a common.
So it's not a common thing.
I've
Okay.
never seen that before.
And you've seen a lot of snakes in the state. Have you seen every species of rattlesnake in the wild?
I have.
Yeah,
in this state.
In this state.
Which is not a huge big deal. They're like 9.
9. Okay.
You want to hear them?
Yeah.
Well, the two common ones are the western diamondback, our largest rattlesnake. Now, they can go over 5 feet.
They're the ones with the black and white ring around near the tail.
So the western diamondback, it's not the only snake with black and white bands on the tail, but I'll get back to that. The most common rattlesnake is probably the prairie rattlesnake, and its range just about covers New Mexico. So, with the exception of geographical features that might prohibit them living there, they're going to be just about anywhere in New Mexico.
Crotalus viridis?
Viridis.
Viridis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See, you know your stuff. So we have Mojave rattlesnakes down in the southwestern corner of the state. I hear people. I had a lady from Santa Fe in the other day. She was sure she had a Mojave rattlesnake in her yard in Santa Fe, and I said no, probably wasn't. And then she showed me a picture of the snake, and it was a bull snake. I said, no, that's not a rattlesnake at all. That's a bull snake.
She told her, you're very bored at home,
man. No, she was sure I was wrong. Some people you just can't talk to.
Yeah.
No, so she went away disgusted with my answer. But no Mojave rattlesnakes in Santa Fe. They're in the southwest part of the state, very far southwest. We have the ridge-nosed rattlesnake down in the Animas Mountains in the southwest corner of the state. We've got banded rock rattlesnakes and several mountain peaks in New Mexico, probably 14 different mountain ranges. We've got the mottled rock rattlesnake down in the southeast part of the state.
And there's supposed to be one of them that is more cryptic, if I use the terminology right, more cryptic than others in terms of how they can hide. There was one of them that I think you'd highlighted on your site that you were saying is one of the better ones to hide. And again, it goes back to where they're at, right? Because there's ones that are more focused in an area. I think it was like the ones that were like towards Arizona that were better off in a rocky area comparatively to like a sandy area.
Yeah.
Right. Cause so do they, I mean, evolutionarily speaking, do they find those areas? Like if I'm a rock cryptic snake, I'm good at hiding in rocks. Do I frequent rocks better?
Well,
I mean,
you're a better survivor in that circumstance.
In that environment. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know if they were naturally drawn to that just purely over, the terms of evolution. Cause you get a sandy one pulling away into some gray rock and he stands out like a sore thumb. I wouldn't think that would be the game, right? Like
I think more likely the animals that are more cryptic or blend in better with their environment are the survivors.
Sure. Okay.
And then they breed and then they make more snakes that look like them because they're not being eaten.
Now, and because this got spoken of before we turned on the microphones, what was this snake that you said you had found that we have over here, which I hope to get some shots of, but you said that it looks like it's a blending of two species.
Right. It is a hybrid. It was found on the west side of Albuquerque.
Okay.
And it has features of the western diamondback and the prairie rattlesnake, both of which live in that area. So it makes sense that could happen and did happen.
Sure.
It is very obviously those two species. I've seen hybrids, western diamondback prairie hybrids that were accidentally bred in zoos that don't look so much like either one.
Wow.
This one is just right down the middle.
It's like a liger, like a lion tiger.
Yeah, right.
So what did you call it? What's the name of it again?
We call it a Viratrox. It's a combination of the two species names. Viridis, and Atrox.
That sounds like a transformer. It's so fitting.
Yes.
Viratrox. I love it. No, I didn't mean to tangent, but I felt like it was very befitting of the conversation because you've got these individuals and then you've got ones that are essentially becoming a hybrid of. I wonder if so this isn't something that's studied as much to see if this is more venomous or more XYZ of the species, one or the other.
Say that again.
No.
In the case of
So with this guy, let's say that the Western may be more, maybe they get bigger, maybe and maybe the other type gets more venom, per volume or something like that. Mm-hmm. This guy may be both of those better things put together, which would be, of course, what evolution kind of moves towards, right? Is it tries to make the species better.
But more likely here, it's going to be right down the middle.
Okay.
It's not going to be the big snake. It's not going to be the small snake. It's going to be somewhere down the middle.
Damn it. I was trying to come up with something, I thought we had like the one.
You've seen too many movies.
I know. I'm sorry,
Jurassic Park is killing you.
So if you have 30 species of rattlesnake in here,
right?
So that's more than the zoo, right? You have more. You have more rattlesnakes than the zoo, but you have more venomous snakes.
This guy crawling on the damn cactus over here. I'm proud of that guy.
I was proud of him. This prairie rattlesnake get on this crawling up in this cactus here and getting on that windmill thing. There.
I'm proud of these snakes. They're over here they're exploring. They're exploring their
They're
home.
all around us, and none of us have gotten bit yet. I just want to point that out. Not a single one.
Nor
of us
are they
has got
rattling.
bit in here.
Not a single one.
No.
So
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And you study rattlesnake dens too. I read somewhere that you started by tracking the distance or the time it takes them to move from their den to their where they live and then back or something like that.
How far they might migrate from a den.
How it would.
But there are a lot of those studies being that have been done. And I believe the record, the Eastern Diamondback has there too, 7 or 8 miles from their den.
Wow.
Whoa.
The Eastern Diamondback's having a tougher time though, with more roads being built, more obstacles in their way. They're having a tough time getting to and from.
They got to do those 7 or 8 miles with no legs and no hands. And
yeah, so anybody wants to have excuses about getting out there and hiking or any of those, just remember that there's a legless, footless individual.
Yeah, so I always tell people I have a 50% less chance of getting bit and envenomated because I got my prosthetic legs. I just put that leg forward.
Well, what's awesome though is whenever I've run into rattlesnakes with this guy is he can actually get closer because he can put his prosthetic leg forward, and it's not, he can get a little closer than I would have the balls to get closer. I'm not even going to lie because I wouldn't even get near as much, but to be able to step and then take the camera and get that shot that I'm definitely not going to even attempt, because I don't own a pair of snake proof anything, boots, all the above. My grandfather would use a claw in order, it was like it had 2 prongs on the bottom and one at the top, and it would actuate, and that's what he'd use when he'd do these snake roundups, and he would grab onto them. But I noticed that the ones that you have here are just a hook. So when you go out and handle these rattlesnakes, if and when you come across one that you're trying to check out, you just use a hook to pick these things up?
Yeah.
And you don't wear any protective gear?
No, I wear hiking shoes.
Sure. Okay.
And I watch where I step.
Sure.
And if I'm going somewhere where I'm hiking through high grass and I know I'm going to be there, I might wear a boot.
And when you say boot, like a specific type, like these snake bite proof type?
Well, you can get boots that are designed specifically to be snake proof, but just about any leather boot is going to be snake proof.
Okay. So they're not, okay. I didn't know how strong can they just go through their Wolverine claws here? Can they go through?
Yeah, they make puncture proof boots. When I started out hiking when I was a lot younger, I would wear those exclusively. And but the more I've hiked, I hike in Converse now, and I go everywhere in the mountains and stuff. I go to find snakes, and sometimes I don't find them. But they're not it's not like everywhere you go, there's just snakes crawling all over the place and you have to avoid them. Yeah. There's a lot of snakes out there, but you just got to be careful and pay attention where you walk. But they are, some of them I have almost stepped on. They are so good at hiding, and I'm looking for them, and I've almost stepped on them, jumped back because I see a snake right there, a foot in front of me.
Yeah, and they didn't bite you.
Nope. And they didn't bite you.
Well, you got to be a serious threat to them for them to want to defend themselves.
Sure.
And I read alcohol has a lot to do with it too. A lot of people drinking go out there and try and mess with a snake or try and pick it up.
Liquid bravery.
I read that.
I've heard that too. I've visited a lot of people at the hospital though. I have never visited with somebody that was out there drunk
while they were messing with a snake.
I have visited with kids and women, doing all kinds of things, gardening, and I have never run into an intoxicated individual that got bitten because of that. So I'm sure it happens, but it may be blown out of proportion. The craziest bite I visited, and maybe this guy will hear this podcast. I went to the hospital one day to visit a young guy. The hospital would call me when people were bitten by rattlesnakes, and I was interviewing each one of them. But I walked into a room. There's a little boy from Gallup who had been bitten by a rattlesnake. His head was swollen round, and the fang marks were dead between his eyes.
What?
This little guy had picked up a little baby rattlesnake and wanted a good close look, so he held it right up to his face. And by then, the snake thought he was lunch for some giant monster and hit him right between the eyes.
Oh, my gosh.
And caused some swelling, but the kid was fine. He was bouncing on his bed when I walked in there. And he told his parents a different story than he told me. That was an interesting thing. I know he didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But
no, it jumped right at my face. It flew, Mom. It flew.
Yeah. There's another story, 20 years ago at least, out in Harris Canyon. A little girl was bitten by a rattlesnake. But prior to that, her parents, knowing that they had rattlesnakes in the area, warned her that she better never play with a rattlesnake or she was going to be in big trouble with them. So evidently she fiddled with a rattlesnake, got bitten in the ankle. Didn't tell them because she didn't want to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Too. So she complained about pain in her ankle. They took her to the doctor. Somehow the doctor missed fang marks in her ankle and sent her back home, saying, just stay off your foot for a while. 12 hours after the bite, she admitted to it. And they rushed her back to the doctor again, the hospital. And by then she had made it through the worst of it, without treatment. And but it could have gone bad. So I always tell parents, think about what you're saying to your kids. Make sure you're not, setting up a bad situation.
And my son's one of those type that would not. He would hear I might get in trouble, and he'd rather try to hide it instead of
because he loves things. As a parent, you think you're trying to do what's right for the kid and protect them.
Well, after 12 years, my snake finally popped my 3-year-old boy, and it was, and our snake is tame enough, ball python, mind you, male, these snakes are as tame as you're going to get a snake. Never in my life have I seen the snake even lunge at one of us. And we always feed live, which is, I'm going to change that now that I talk to you about.
I would.
But I've always fed live. And even then he's never struck at me in particular. Never once has he ever nailed me. Even when he's had a bad day, had, what they call eye caps, which is where they shed and they still have some of the shed on their eyeballs, and it gives them like a blurry, look, which is, I'm just for you guys listening. But he decided that he was going to walk away from me, and I was watching TV or something, and our snake's tame enough. I'll let the snake hang out on, the kid's neck. I want to hold the snake. Okay, you can hold the snake, as long as they don't touch the head, don't be aggressive with him. I don't know what my son did, but he finally got popped in the hand. He was more afraid to tell me that he had gotten popped in the hand, so we found out after we'd put the snake up and everything was good, and he's showing me, and I see that pattern you see from a ball python bite, because they don't have fangs per se, they have little teeth all the way around the shape of their head, and you could see one side of it almost almost perfectly where it got nailed. I said, what did you do? I don't know, and I know he had to have aggressively grabbed, because this snake's never hit one of us.
Teased it. He could have moved his hand that made the snake think it was food.
Sure. And I've had one before years ago that was not handled very well, or whatever the history was, that I had traded to a pet store for, and I was holding a cup of coffee, and I thought it'd be a funny thing to hold the cup of coffee up towards the snake, like, oh, have a drink. And that snake, being a pit viper, right? Do I have this right? Or they have the heat pits?
No, pit vipers.
Not pit viper, excuse me. They have the heat sensing pits.
Right. They're not pit vipers, but they do have heat-sensitive pits.
So essentially, this is a second set of eyes for them to where they can see the heat, and that's how they hunt, right? Or one of the ways that they hunt. And he fired off at my coffee cup, and it shot out of my hand, because I was scared, and I was it was a nice hot cup of coffee, and that was the last time I ever jacked around with even a ball python, So I think you got to have respect for the animal, and it
kind of highlights the fact that there's so little education about snakes out there.
This is true.
People just have these ideas and they think they know. And do you work with any kind of like conservation or education thing? Do you have anything going like that?
Every day of the week.
Well, talking to the people that come in.
With
all these stories,
day by day. But we get school groups in. In the summertime, we get camp groups, science camps, you name it, Boy Scouts, all kinds. And we do try to hit them up with a good education about reptiles. And for some of the kids, they're hearing information about snakes for the first time, which is a good thing. Because if the first time is from a parent or a friend, they may get
some
one
goofball
of
like
these
me.
old wives' tales.
Sure. Telling them to kill them.
No, they have eggs. I swear they have eggs. I didn't know. Now I know.
Well, a lot of people think, all snakes are born alive. I think it's odd that some aren't.
Yeah.
Or some don't lay eggs. But it's true. 70% of snakes lay eggs and the others don't.
Huh. That's a platypus
Varying.
lays an egg. So it's a bizarre thing.
And among
and it's something a lot of people may not know. You have a platypus skeleton here.
Yes.
I don't think you have a platypus, but platypus are venomous.
The males are.
The males are. Okay.
Venomous spurs on their back legs.
That is such a trip.
We do cover some of the other venomous animals.
Scorpion.
Right now, the Gila monster, scorpions, spiders.
Gilas are venomous. They're not bacterial.
Right.
Okay. So what is a Komodo comparatively?
Well,
Komodo
there's
dragon.
still a big debate out there about that.
Okay.
They definitely have bacteria in their saliva.
Okay.
There are some scientists, one in particular, that feels that they are venomous in addition. But there are others that are battling with him. So I don't think it's set in stone that Komodo dragons are venomous, but the Gila monsters certainly are, and so are the beaded lizards from Mexico.
Wow. Okay. So how could somebody get involved if they wanted to with Rattlesnake Museum? If I wanted to bring my kids, is there something that you guys do annually or weekly, anything like that?
We're open 360 some days a year.
Okay.
Closed on major holidays. If your kids, meaning your own kids, just bring them by any time.
Sure.
If your kids, meaning you're a teacher, you've got a class of kids, give us a call. We'll set up a scheduled time.
Okay.
And get you in. We love to get school groups in the morning before we open to the general public so that the kids can have full run of the museum. And we have scavenger hunts for them, and it's a teaching experience.
Sure.
We don't tell them that. We
Right.
say you're going to learn something today. It might scare them. But we sneak it in there.
Right.
Yeah, we do all ages from 3 on up. For some kids, they're hearing the word reptile for the first time.
Wow.
They have no idea.
Yeah. Do you bring any of these guys out, or do you guys typically just point and shoot kind of thing?
We do have ball pythons that we can bring out for
Okay.
kids. We're careful and cautious about who we put that in front of. We wouldn't hand a ball python to a 3-year-old.
Right.
But I've had senior groups here. I remember a woman, 85 years old, that touched and held a ball python for the first time in her life.
Wow.
She was so excited. She she acted 5 years old. And all of a sudden, she wanted everybody to touch that.
Come on, no, it's
She
real.
thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of Kurt Russell holding a ball python on your website.
Yeah. We've had a lot of movie stars show up here.
And Jeff Corwin in the front
Jeff
entrance
Corwin,
right there.
We used to provide a lot of snakes for his shows.
Oh, wow.
That's so cool.
Got to know him pretty well.
And when you do these rescues, do you keep a lot of these snakes? Like if you see one that's kind of been beat up or something like that, do you try to take them in and rehab them before you put
If
them
they're
back
injured, we will bring them in. If they're not, we try to release them, get them back out there right away.
out? Sure. Are you guys pointed at more so than like game and fish or something like that, just because of your expertise?
Yeah, most often if it's a reptile or amphibian, it comes here.
Wow. Okay.
If it's a bird or mammal, it goes to wildlife rescue.
Sure. I pulled a golden eagle off of the ditch one time that was
Wow.
very, very dehydrated, and she, I'm not sure, had a broken wing, and I was working for the entity that messes with the irrigation ditches. So I was flying down the ditch with my truck, and I thought I saw a bird, but I didn't know it was that kind of bird. So I hit my brakes, because it was the weirdest thing. It was sitting right against the ditch, like right where the water was going. And I think what it was trying to do is it was trying to get water because it was dehydrated. And when I flew by him, I stop and I get out and I said, "Are you okay?" And he was trying his darndest to be to be big and aggressive, but you could just tell he was shot. Yeah, he was defensive. That's the word. I got to quit using aggressive. But he was just trying to show me that, hey, you can't eat me, you know. But he was just so tired. Like he lifted his wings up and he opened his mouth and then he just fell over, you know. And I was like, oh man. And I saw his wing was broken, or her. And I wrapped him up and I called, I think, Cayman Fish, and I flew them out there. So do you guys get calls for a lot of stuff, or is it just the reptiles that you guys usually get?
We have rescued a few birds.
Wow.
But,
Okay.
Special circumstances there, but we get called for reptiles.
Okay.
If somebody calls wildlife rescue, they'll probably send those people to us.
Sure.
If they get something indirectly, a snake or a turtle, they'll bring it here.
Okay. Wow.
And every time I get a phone call from them, I keep my fingers crossed that the animal's not injured.
Right.
So often they are.
Do you get people bringing them in here? People coming in here with rattlesnakes and stuff like that?
Yep, unannounced.
Yeah.
People bring in their pet reptiles. I'm moving out of town. I can't find a home for this.
Oh,
Can
wow.
you take my ball python or whatever it is? Yeah, we get a lot of animals.
And you guys rehome them?
We try to
Okay.
find homes.
I've seen stuff through the Herpetological Society.
Yeah, a lot of times people in the society will take those.
Talk to me about this Herpetological Society.
I keep thinking I'm saying it wrong too.
I don't know.
Herpetological.
Okay.
Herpetological.
And what is this comparatively? I mean, what is this group? Because they have meetings here.
Right. These are people into reptiles and amphibians.
Yep.
And once a month they meet here. They have a guest speaker. The subject could be almost anything, but usually reptile related.
Sure. We're not talking about Lethal Weapon sequels or anything. We're talking about reptiles.
We're talking reptiles, yeah.
So and then in the same breath, do you get a lot of does the city of Albuquerque come along and try to give you guys, you know, hey, we'd like to inform kids or anything like that and do like some sort of a thing at the museum or anything like that?
Well, we get other groups from other museums, natural history museums.
Sure. Okay.
Because
I would think they'd think you're the authority on that.
Well, on very little, but rattlesnakes we can handle.
Well, you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. Of course not on mammoths, but, you know, something like that, because that wouldn't be a place that I've never seen anything like that at the Natural History Museum. So
they do hold science camps at the at, say, the Natural History Museum, and
Sure.
they'll bring those kids over here. Even groups from the Atomic Museum.
Wow.
I know
Okay.
they've got a new name, and I'm not using that right, but yeah, they bring groups here every year, and they're good groups to teach because they're science-minded kids and they want to hear it.
Sure. And they're probably going to be a faucet to spread information. Hey, I was at this place where, you know, don't you kill that snake.
Anybody who's anxious about
Snakes
coming
are
here
not
too.
aggressive.
Yeah, yeah. They're not aggressive. They're defensive. And I may end up editing all my aggressive words.
No, you got to leave it in there. This is how you learn. And people who are anxious about coming here too. There's no snakes crawling around on the floor or anything like that. They're all in secure cages.
No.
I'm sitting right here. I could probably see 7 or 8 snakes from right where I'm sitting. It's really fascinating. They're beautiful, beautiful
like 18.
animals.
Yep.
Well, from where I'm sitting,
Yeah.
I've only got this wall, but there's a lot of snakes in here, and they're gorgeous, gorgeous creatures.
Well, thanks. By the way, I tell kids when we talk about the difference between aggressive and defensive, I say there are some animals in the world that are aggressive towards people, but they're all animals that eat people. So I said, let's come up with a list, and they know tigers,
Grizzly
some of
bears.
the big bears,
Polar bears.
big crocodiles.
Yeah.
So you got a couple of snakes in here, at least one that eats rattlesnakes, the king snake.
Well, we have all 4 king snakes of New Mexico on exhibit, so people can see those. We have other reptiles that are on exhibit that aren't venomous, but they help to tell the rattlesnake story. Some that look like rattlesnakes to a lot of people, some that act like rattlesnakes, shaking their tail, the same nervous habit that a rattlesnake has, and some, like the king snakes, will eat small rattlesnakes. So that's part of the story. And for people to think rattlesnakes are the tough guys in the block, not necessarily.
Yeah.
They get eaten by a lot of things. How come a rattlesnake has a rattle?
Well, it comes down to theories, but best theory is probably to protect themselves. Out on the prairie, if a herd of bison are coming your way, you're in a bad situation. You're down on the ground, they can't see you. So you sound off, you let them know where you are, And even though a bison could take a rattlesnake bite like a mosquito bite, once they hear it, they tend to
veer away,
go around it.
Wow.
So avoid it.
So they won't be stepped on.
So they won't be stepped on.
Ungulate.
Saves their life.
From a hoofed animal, some kind of hoofed animal. It doesn't have anything to do with people.
No, before people were around, rattlesnakes were having to save their own lives.
Right.
Now, I've heard them described as the gentleman snake. They let you know that they're there. Which, they're not going to bite you until they warn you.
Another myth, right?
Yeah, they don't necessarily sound off before a bite. If you step right on a rattlesnake, they'll defend themselves.
Defend?
They feel that they're under attack, and they'll turn and bite.
Sure.
And that may be a dry bite, just a get off me bite, not that I want to eat you. And another theory is that they give dry bites because they will be saving that venom for getting food later on.
It all costs calories. Everything they do costs calories.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a theory or if it's just something people are thinking, but have you heard of this? More and more rattlesnakes are not rattling because the ones who do rattle are the ones getting round up and killed. And then so the ones that aren't predisposed to rattling as much end up breeding.
Yeah. I hear this every week.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is they've always been quiet. They always keep quiet and keep to themselves and hope you pass by. I've talked to evolutionary biologists that say to change a behavior in a species like that would take 10,000 years or more.
Sure, evolution at its finest there.
We would never see that in our lifetime.
We're not affecting them in that way.
No.
Other than killing them relentlessly for no reason with the rattlesnake roundups.
Well, that happens a lot, but we're only coming in contact with a fraction of the rattlesnakes anyway. And the ones that they're picking up, say for rattlesnake roundups, they're decimating a den. They're extracting every rattlesnake out of there.
What do they do in these roundups? I guess I've never. Did they kill them?
Yes.
And then they turn them into
everything. They do
ornaments
everything.
and.
There's one in Alamogordo, right? There's one that yearly in Alamogordo.
Not any longer.
They got rid of it.
Yeah, they've been gone for 10, 15 years.
Are any of these guys that are in here? I guess they couldn't be in here if they were on the endangered species list. Is that a thing? I mean, is that?
We can have a permit for such things. One protected rattlesnake species in New Mexico, the ridge-nosed rattlesnake, I have chosen not to even ask permission to have one because I like to think that they're out there taking care of themselves. They don't have much of a range here in New Mexico.
Sure.
I have seen them in the wild, and it's impressive to see that rare animal. And so I tell the story about it. I have one in a bottle of formaldehyde that somebody collected in the 70s. It was part of a study. And it has been on and off exhibit, but we've never had a live one here.
Wow.
There are other subspecies of that ridge-nosed rattlesnake that are more readily available, but the New Mexico ridge-nose is highly protected.
I was reading about a rattlesnake, a Santa Catalina rattlesnake, supposed to be one of the most endangered.
Oh, I don't know about that, but that's the one they call the Rattleless rattlesnake. Technically, that's not the best name for it, but they do develop rattlesnake rattle segments, but they fall off as soon as they develop. They don't need a rattle supposedly because they don't need to defend themselves where they live, and they certainly don't want to sound off and let the birds know that they're coming.
Yeah.
So
there he is.
they're one of two rattlesnake species that are described as rattleless rattlesnakes.
That's very interesting. Rattleless rattlesnakes.
Which brings up another thing that I hear all the time. People come in and they let me know that they've heard that bull snakes and rattlesnakes are mating, creating rattleless rattlesnakes, and that's not true either.
Yeah,
they're not close enough genetically to pull that one off.
Sure.
So,
but two rattlesnake types could do that. But two rattlesnake types,
two rattlesnakes in many cases can interbreed. So can a lot of king snakes. And
sure, ball pythons the same way. Yeah. And that, because I know that there's a huge market for ball pythons in that way, where they consider them heterozygous, right, for a specific type of gene, which would make them colored one way or another. Because it's usually that is what makes them more popular or more sellable.
There's a lot of that in the pet trade. They create stunning looking snakes,
Yeah.
jaw-dropping snakes. And last time I heard, there were over 300 variations on pattern and color.
Wow. Yeah, there's one particular, and I've always had an obsession with it just because it's one of the more expensive ones, but the piebald ball python is like $30,000 for one that is het for, which would be...
They're not even that expensive anymore.
Not anymore.
Piebald.
They've actually dropped?
They have a scaleless ball python now.
What?
Somebody's created this.
They've been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
Scaleless rattlesnakes, but they're typically not healthy snakes. They don't live long lives.
Sure. That's part of the deal. You need to have scales in order to shed off damage and things of that nature, right? And
you have or had some albinos and melanistic snakes in here?
Well, we've got the albino western diamondback, and right next door to that is the melanistic jet black western diamondback. On the other side over there, we've got a striped western diamondback, and people are amazed. They think they know what a western diamondback looks like because they've seen plenty of westerns. And then the two so-called normal western diamondbacks are totally different colors.
The two over there in the corner?
Depending on where they've come from. One is from southern New Mexico, the other one from Kansas. And anybody that really knows their rattlesnakes will question what I just said, because the range for the western diamondback in Kansas is the size of a postage stamp. It's a very limited range in that state.
I didn't know. I focus on New Mexico. That's my thing. I've seen some darker colored rattlesnakes too. We were out in the Manzanos, even in El Malpais. They have really dark rattlesnakes. Probably western diamondbacks. I mean, I know
probably.
There's a few other species. Yeah. The one that I see the most is a western diamondback or the prairie.
And you can see that from the pattern, right? Like the pattern on their back. Is it the head shape?
You're talking about the color, though.
The different colors of these two different types of rattlesnakes, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've seen western diamondbacks, dark chocolate brown, silvery color, pinkish, greenish.
Wow.
It's kind of a wheat color, all kinds of colors. And a lot of times it comes down to where they live. Out where you might have seen them, it could be near lava flows.
Yeah.
Dark. Blends in a little bit better there, protects the snake. But one size does not fit all. People that think they know what a snake, certain snake looks like, can be surprised to find out that there's all kinds of variations.
And you come in here and you come to the museum and walk around and you'll see tons of different types of rattlesnakes. A lot of people just think that there's a rattlesnake.
Right.
You wouldn't know.
I think of the one sandy colored with the big head, gorgeous looking eyes. That's the one that I usually think of. That's the one I've run into the most, I would imagine. But I know that we ran into one. I know you've seen so many, but the one time that we found the shed of the snake.
That was
and
a western diamondback.
It was the most gorgeous snake, and it either had just shed or something, because we seen on one side of this boulder, and then we climb over the boulder and we saw the snake, and man, he was majestic. Like, he was the biggest I've ever seen in terms of width, roundness, girth. Well, there you go. And he was just real fresh looking, like just right out, and he was ready to bite. He did not care. He saw us and he heard us coming, because we were, oh my God, look at this shed. We're right on the other side of this rock from him, and he can hear us making noise, and I think we're taking pictures. And then we climb over the rock, and right as we climb over the rock, there he is, just hanging out. And he was like, hey, now you found me.
It was on the southern end of the Manzanos. Yeah, it was a pretty big western diamondback.
Nice.
I don't see a ton.
We know,
I see a lot more than me.
So we know that we don't want to kill them when we see them. Call the Rattlesnake Museum. Call Game and Fish if you see one that's in your home or someplace where you don't want them to be.
Colorado Snake Museum.
Call the Rattlesnake.
Call the Rattlesnake.
Did I say that weird? Did I say that?
Colorado too.
Call the Rattlesnake Museum. I can speak.
Well, it just depends on where you're seeing it too. You don't need to call somebody for every snake you see.
Sure, but I mean, you get a single stay-at-home mom. She's in her backyard gardening. She runs into one of these things. Don't take a shovel to it, is what we're saying. Don't take a gun to it. As the guy
give us a call. We're happy to come out and get them.
Cool.
Typically, rattlesnakes are not real mobile animals. They'll sit still for a long time. If it is a bull snake or a non-venomous snake, typically they're more active and they'll be moving along. But we'll get out there, pick up the rattlesnake, and move it to a different location where it is less likely to come in contact with people. We won't move it great distances. We want it to find its traditional denning site. We want it to pick up scent trails left by other snakes from that den. We just want to get them away from.
I got to ask a question. I had it written down. My son had asked me: does smaller snakes put off more venom than the larger one? Like a baby rattler, is that a thing?
No.
Because they would have less gland, which would be less volume.
Smaller gland, smaller teeth.
Okay.
Smaller amounts of venom.
Okay.
Yeah. When they bite, the way I think that urban myth got started, when baby snakes bite in defense, they always inject venom.
Okay.
They have not developed that ability to hold back venom.
Okay.
But they don't have much to begin with.
Sure.
You're not going to die from a baby rattlesnake bite. It can't happen.
Sure.
So,
but it can make a mess out of whatever it bites. the part that it gets.
So mom has greater volume in her venom sacs, longer fangs. She bites in self-defense. She may give a dry bite. Now, if you want to compare the dry bite from mom to the baby rattlesnake, you could, in a warped way, say that the baby rattlesnake bite was more dangerous.
Sure.
Even though it's not dangerous at all. But mom has the ability and has the venom and has that fang length to give a serious bite. I would never, ever say that baby rattlesnakes are more dangerous.
Sure. And or more safe to handle.
Well,
you could be like, oh, he's just a little one.
I wouldn't handle.
You don't want to handle them.
Any snake, really, unless you have a reason.
Sure.
The only reason,
what
there's
would the
no
reason be?
Right.
No reason.
Can't
really.
imagine.
Is it, and we have moved. My grandfather was good with snakes, beyond him rustling them up, but he's always been good with them. So if we saw one crossing the road and it was like, it would coil up because it got afraid, it got past, and it was in the middle of the road, and he moves it off the road. I mean, there's probably nothing wrong with doing that, right? I mean,
No, in fact, I always tell people that may have been where I got started with snakes. Our family was driving down the road and my dad slammed on the brakes and us three kids in the back had no idea why. He jumped out of the car, didn't say a word, ran around, found a stick, and went back in front of the car and picked up a snake and held it up to the windshield. And we were in awe.
right.
It was amazing.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And
There's the origin. I like
he
it.
picked up that snake and he walked it 100 feet off the road and set it down. When he came back to the car, he explained, he was worried that the snake would be hit by the next car that came along. And it made an impression. Here I am. But that was my dad.
That's huge. So a good snake is an alive snake. That's what I want everybody to take away from this. Not a dead snake.
Great snake.
They're rattlesnakes are able to strike pretty far too. So if you think you're going to get out and move it with a 4-inch twig or something like that,
don't do that.
Again, unless you really have a reason, I wouldn't mess with a rattlesnake. To get it out of the road, if you have a long enough stick,
sure,
maybe. But interacting with the rattlesnake in any way is probably not the best idea unless you have some idea.
And no matter who you are, you don't have the reflexes to get out of the way of a snake bite once it started.
No matrix move.
A rattlesnake bite.
You can't catch it in midair or anything.
Do you know how fast they are?
I've only heard them compared to the punch of a Mike Tyson punch. I wouldn't want to get in the way of either one. But
can it break a limb or something like that? If somebody they can't hit that hard.
No, even the biggest rattlesnake wouldn't be big enough to do that. Maybe a big python, possibly.
Sure.
But cobras, it's interesting, have a more potent venom, more deadly venom, but their strike is slow. So those snake charmers can, if they're paying attention, they can get out of the way of the strike. You can see it coming.
Hence the occupation of being a snake charmer.
The snake charmers could not get away with the same thing using rattlesnakes.
Yeah. Okay, because they're twice as. I did not think of that. That's interesting.
Do they defang rattlesnakes?
There is an operation that can be done. They actually remove the venom sacs.
So they still have the fangs?
And they're described as venomoid, but they still have their fangs. They still can bite. It's still going to hurt.
I think it's a terrible practice,
but
too.
I'm
just curious if they do that.
I don't see a good, valid reason for that.
Because they depend on that, again, to kill their prey or to start the process of killing it.
I hear even the cobras and stuff that they devenomate or remove the fangs or they end up dying a lot sooner. Even they could be treated the exact same way they were before they had, but something about removing it makes them die. I wouldn't recommend anybody doing it either way or keeping one as a pet. It's just not a good idea.
Yeah, and I get that a lot. People come in here and they say, I've always thought about keeping a cobra as a pet. And I go, really?
They call them hot herps.
You might rethink that.
Yeah.
I I ask them, have you ever kept a snake as a pet? And they go, well, no, but it looks like it'd be a cool thing to do. And I say, well, keep a bull snake. Take a bull snake home and keep it. And every time it gets out of its cage, imagine that that's a cobra in your house.
Yeah.
And see how that makes you
My
feel.
ball python is probably the sneakiest of pets. We have a little clip that holds the top on, and I can't even count on both my hands how many times he's been able, because my kids will put him back, and if that thing is not clipped just right, he will find, because every day what he's doing is he's testing to see which corner he can move, and if he can move his head in there, he's gone. And then once you find him, he's wrapped up inside of a couch and he's hissing at you, he's trying to scare you, he's saying, I got out, I'm free, leave me alone. And I couldn't imagine him being a hot snake. Reptile, because that would be, oh my God, it'd be so scary. Because I've had to open couches. He's gotten behind towels. I've lost him for 2 days at a time, and then we'll find him underneath a drawer or something. I'm like, how the hell did you figure out how to get? I mean, if they can fit their head there, right? That's supposed to be the idea. They will put their whole body there, and that's the same thing with game. They can eat things that are roughly the size of their head. Yeah, that's insane to me.
Have you had any in here ever escape their cages?
I have never. If I did, I'd have to
Close
up
down for a
business
while.
until I found him.
Listen, I'd love to have you in, but we got an issue right now.
Hey, who wants to come in and scavenger hunt? You got to sign this waiver.
Back to keeping snakes and keeping venomous snakes. I'd recommend anybody interested in keeping a venomous snake keep non-venomous for 10 or 20 years.
Sure.
Until they figure out how to keep the snake in its cage.
Yeah.
In your case, I'd recommend you get a different kind of cage.
Yeah, it is an old cage. It's my fault. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm lucky in the fact that this snake has always been cool. And I say cool because I've had the same breed, ball pythons, and I've had very aggressive ones that I could not. Huh?
You keep saying that.
All right. Could not touch, and they would get defensive very quickly. All right. That's the word. That's the verbiage I want to use.
The word of the day.
Yeah, but I couldn't, I like to let them out sometime. And this is not maybe the best husbandry, but I had let them out when I'd first gotten snakes. I thought, let me go put him in the grass out front and let him cruise a little bit, and I'll take pictures of him. And the moment that he smells freedom, that boy is angry because he says, you can't touch me now, and they will do whatever they can to get you to leave him alone, right. And that was the thing. And even the ball python himself, like, he would get very defensive. You like that? I finally used it. So yeah, if you take care of you get good husbandry. I always recommend books. I tell people, they're always like, well, what do I need to do? I say, you need to get a book.
Good place to start.
Yeah. Come see Bob. And,
what's a book?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially nowadays. So what advice could you give that we haven't talked about? I know we've covered so many different facets of this.
Take that conversation a little bit further. If you've got kids in the house,
okay,
and you want a cage with a lock on it,
okay,
and I would recommend you not keep venomous snakes if you've got kids in the house.
Yeah, or almost period. That sounds.
But if you can lock down your cage, there's a better chance it's going to stay in there. And if you have kids and you take your ball python out, stay with the kids.
Sure.
Kids.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. I'm usually on top of them, but my 3-year-old did a little cruise, and when he walked away from me, that's when he didn't cry though. Like you said, he was just more scared that he's going to get in trouble. So I give him, and plus my boy's kind of crazy.
There's another option though. I mean, if you want a rattlesnake in a cage, you can just come to the Rattlesnake Museum.
Hey, that's well done.
Cages over here.
I like it. So is it rattlesnakemuseum.com? Rattlesnakes.com. Nice. Okay. And then where else can we find you? Is that basically the best place to find you?
We've got a couple Facebook pages.
Okay.
Under Rattlesnake Museum and under American International Rattlesnake Museum.
Okay.
Our full and formal name. Both are kept up by friends, and I don't get on there very often.
Got you. Well, and I mean, you're here tending, your flock, your herd. What do you call it? What do you call a group of snakes? Is it a den?
A group of rattlesnakes is a rumba. There's a new word for you. A group
rumba.
of cobras is a quiver. So there you go.
A flock of jellyfish is called a smack. Isn't that what it's called?
A smack of jellyfish. I love it. Well, you have officially joined the murder. The perch, right? The perch of birds, the murder of crows, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if they wanted to find you, we're at San Felipe in Old Town, Albuquerque.
Yeah, we're just south of the plaza, just south of where the people sit on the sidewalk selling jewelry.
Okay.
Everybody that's been to Old Town has seen those people. So we're easy to get to.
Yeah. And it's very iconic looking. And I'm going to have plenty of pictures. We're hoping to take a little bit more video and a little bit more pictures of here. And then you were saying, I've seen, this is probably still in the works, but you want to expand and try to maybe get into a bigger location because you have a lot of goodies here that you can't necessarily put out.
Oh, yeah. Well, in addition, we've talked so much about snakes, and that's the main reason people come in. But we surprise them with a lot of snake-related artwork and artifacts. Anything and everything that helps tell the story. Right now, we're creating that all about bees. Bees are in decline, so we're giving them a little bit of attention. They fit in here because they are venomous animals.
Sure. Okay.
Not poisonous, too. That's another thing we talk about, the difference between poison and venom. But that's for another day. It's 3 a.m. right now, and I've got to have you guys out of here by sunup, okay?
Where the keg is running
the
dry.
Rattlesnakes start waking up
That's
outside too.
Yeah, and then he's got gators, alligators, or am I talking crocodiles? What am I looking at here?
Well, we've got the skulls of many different crocodilians. You're looking at a gharial right there.
Okay, this thing is
Long,
probably
narrow-snouted.
3/4 of my body length.
Well, the one at the bottom is a prehistoric crocodilian.
I was going to say that is a monster.
Gharial sucus. And yeah, his jaw, he's big enough he could take you down in one bite.
There was some mega snakes. I don't think no rattlesnakes or no venomous snakes, but there was some incredibly large constrictors at one point that thankfully are not around.
Boa.
Yeah.
And the Meg. Can't forget the Meg that's in theaters now. I like anything that
shark
even leans.
Right.
Well, come on, but it leans back towards the it predates, and it's we're teaching and informing. I would have never known that. Like, that seems like something you'd make up, but that's legitimately something that existed. Titanoboa was. So is the megalodon, right? So you get the Meg, the giant. So what and what was this again? I apologize. You just said it.
A gharial sucus.
A gharial sucus.
Now,
And that's
a lot of people know about super croc, which is a cousin to that one. Sarcosuchus, and that was even 6 inches longer than this.
wow.
So monster crocs.
And I'm going to call back my Hollywood. The Suchomimus was the sailfin in Jurassic Park 3. That was the dinosaur, so I could see.
Suchomimus was a
No?
fast running dinosaur.
Damn it.
You're thinking of the
Again.
venomous dinosaur?
Maybe. I don't know. I thought they said Suchomimus because he was talking about the snout. Maybe I got it wrong. But he said the name,
Yes,
You need to watch more movies.
I do.
I have to all put
That is a whole
Jurassic
nother
Park.
podcast, Bob, and we're going to do a movie one, and we're going to debunk them all. No, we're so we've got the bees, we've got the crocodiles, we've got the alligators.
Right now, Steve Irwin's memorial.
That was beautiful. I saw that coming in.
Gone for a while, but we keep him alive here. Gosh, what else is going on? Native American art, Kachinas. I love the new Kachina collection. It's complete, short one Kachina, all of the reptile-related Kachinas.
Wow.
Who would have thunk it?
Yeah.
Who would have thunk it? And then the bottle collection keeps growing. Our visitors send us reptile-labeled bottles of usually soda, beer, and wine.
Do you have the, isn't there one with a snake in it? Isn't that like some sort of a whiskey or a tequila or
That's
something like that?
Else. Usually comes from the Orient.
Okay.
Snake wine.
Okay.
Abusaki. And we do have a collection of those bottles,
Of course you do. Damn it.
Yes.
I love it. Bob, this is awesome, man. Honestly, this was a huge treat to come on and have you
Thank
on as a guest, and of course have us here inside of this place. Jared, do you have any more questions you can think of to ask the man?
Way too many questions. I don't know how long you want this to go on, but I could ask all day.
Did we have any that we may have missed that may interest our listeners?
I don't know if you want to talk real quick about rattlesnake dens. It's something that kind of fascinates me, that rattlesnakes all get together at a certain time.
When the temperatures start to drop, snakes in this area start heading to their den sites. They'll follow each other's scent trails to get back there. And by the middle of October, they're usually at the dens. At that time, if you know where those dens are, you can visit with them. The snakes will be congregated in larger numbers. They come outside the den in the heat of the day, sun themselves, and then go back in when the temperatures drop at the end of the day. But they spend their winter months down underground below the freeze line. But even so, it's not a true hibernation. They will come out on warm days in the middle of the winter.
What's like the most amount of snakes you've ever seen at a den?
Oh, 300.
Wow.
Really?
Like
I've
Indiana
heard of
Jones
thousands.
almost.
And
So as the
it's
winter
few.
approaches, we're in the end of September here. This is probably going to start to be their movement.
Snakes are heading that way now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are they, as far as the rattlesnakes in New Mexico, I know there's a few that are critically or somewhat endangered, but are they at a safe level right now, or are we looking at a decline of rattlesnakes as far as like from what you've seen and the numbers other people, when they study them?
Yeah, not so much with the Western Diamondback because it's got such a large range and a lot of open space. Geography of New Mexico is a whole lot different than, say, Florida, where the Eastern Diamondback is having a lot of trouble. A lot of people down there, a lot of roads, a lot of houses being built. Their traditional lands are encroached upon. They've got fewer and fewer places to live, and they're having a problem.
Huh.
Not such a problem with Western Diamondbacks. Still no reason to kill them. The one rattlesnake in our state that is protected because of possible eradication during a forest fire or something is that one down in the southwest corner. Although they have experienced a fire and they did survive, they found a way.
Yeah.
Nature finds a way.
Rats and mice,
forever.
though, man. Like I'm sure that's the main food source. Them suckers, you just can't get rid of them anywhere. So I'd imagine even after the fire, their food source
It's
is
still
still
food.
kind of hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could keep asking, but I'll save my questions for later.
Well, Bob, what else you got, man? I mean, you got anything that I may not have covered that you were hanging on to? I know we kind of prefaced this about a week
I've got
ago.
secrets I don't tell until I see people's, right here at the museum.
So that means you got to come visit. I like
Got to
that.
come here
I like it.
to hear my secrets.
Well, you got to check it out. Like, this is a whole nother place. Like, there's so much of, I'm going to say this and I may get yelled at, but more of the same. And this is such a different thing in this area. It's such a iconic thing, specifically for New Mexico and New Mexicans. I mean, the Rattlesnake Museum is a piece of work, but it's like, or a piece of artwork, but it's like living artwork. You know what I mean? And something you got to kind of see to really be able to take it in, because it's not like a zoo. I feel like here you're really going to learn something. You're going to take things away that you're not going to find in another place where there may have been, a bunch of educational heads doing it. This is something that comes from passion. You can see that when you walk in here, and the collections reflect that for sure.
Thank you. I'd invite people to come down. The most common comments I hear are things like, I had no idea there were so many different kinds of rattlesnakes.
I didn't either
Or
until I
things
got here.
like, I can't believe rattlesnakes can look like this when I thought they all looked like that. We've all seen Western Diamondbacks. Those are the ones in the movies.
Sure.
But very few people have seen these small species that don't have diamond patterns. They've got bands.
Right. Or scaleless, like you said. Do you have one of those here?
No. Scaleless that's a weird aberration.
Okay.
That's you were talking about a piebald ball python.
Sure.
When we finish here, I'll show you a secret.
Woo-wee.
One of those secrets.
Oh man! So I was about to explain what that is, but I almost don't want to now. So if you want to see what piebald is, then it's gonna be a specific thing that when you come check it out, you guys will trip out.
You got to ask for it.
You got to ask for
it. Not an exhibit.
See, you're making him give away a secret.
No,
already.
he's not. It's
just
no,
one of
that's
thousands.
it. There you go. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
Well, Bob,
a lot goes on here. It is a busy place, and we need more space. If
That's
anybody
it.
out there has a big space that they need filled, we'd be happy to do that.
I love to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, thank you very much for coming on again, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
I
And
enjoyed
Jared,
it.
thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Of course, we got rattlesnakemuseum.com or
Rattlesnakes.
rattlesnakes.com. Really? It's just rattlesnakes.com. Why didn't I catch that?
Rattlesnake,
Okay.
plural.
Okay, rattlesnake, and then we got livenewmexico.com, Mr. Jared here, and he's always trying to represent with great photography of said wild snakes, and as well as any
Wildlife
other.
in general.
Yeah, and then you're going to catch a bunch of shots from his camera on the same thing. So we try to make sure that people know that there's more out there than just what you see in the cities. There's these snakes do come into the city, but they're also all over on these hiking trails, and getting out there and looking at them and not killing them.
And they were here first.
They were here first.
They were here first. You built your road across their driveway, so
That's it.
Yeah, they're not encroaching on your property.
And they're not
You
aggressive.
encroached on theirs,
Yeah.
and they are not aggressive. They will not eat you.
That's it. All right, Bob. I appreciate you, man.
You bet.